Good evening. I've been told I need to call this meeting to order, a joint meeting of our Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council tonight. We'll do a couple of quick house cleaning things. Most of you have already had dinner and you know where the facilities are, but we have one council member that's out on the freeway somewhere and will hope to be joining us soon. We have one council member that had a little procedure today that just didn't feel like that he could sit for the entire time, so I'll be thinking about him. And we have one that may be slipping out that I understand has a prior engagement that you may need to leave a little bit early. So just so that somebody gets up and leaves, he's not upset. He's just had something else had to go to. Airplanes don't wait on you, it's my understanding. So I thought it'd be best to start. My name's Stan Pickett, Mayor of the city, but it might be best to go around, let everybody introduce themselves. And I think we all know each other, but I'll turn it over to my esteemed colleague. I'll let you begin.
Ron Abraham, Planning and Zoning.
Jeff Armstrong, Director of Planning and Development Services.
Debbie Anderson, Planning and Zoning Commissioner.
Jennifer Vidler, Planning and Zoning Commissioner.
David Gustav, Planning and Zoning Commission.
Sheila Lynn, Planning and Zoning Commission.
Jerome Geisler, Planning and Zoning Commission.
Claude McBride, Planning and Zoning Commission.
Bruce Archer, City Council, former Planning and Zoning Commissioner.
Jeff Casper, Council.
Greg Neoshay, Council.
Tandy Burrows, Council.
Cliff Cahealy, City Manager.
All right. We've got quite a few staff over here. We won't make you all stand up, but glad that you're here. And I know we'll be hearing from another group here really soon. So with that, unless there's any questions anybody has, we'll turn this over to Mr. Armstrong. We are, thank you. I've been told we are filming, so if you're speaking, make sure the little green light's on, and cameras all over the room. Hi, we have one other one that's joined us.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Mr. Armstrong?
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very brief so we can get on with the important things tonight. But Jeff Armstrong, Director of Planning and Development Services. This is the second joint meeting of this group to talk about the comprehensive plan that the city is working on. And with us tonight, we have three representatives from our consultants, Freese and Nichols. We have Shad Como, who's the project manager, Alexis Garcia, who's working on the project, and Dan Sefco, who's with Freese and Nichols as well. So you'll be hearing from them most of the evening. I think tonight you'll get some information about the public input that we received over the last few months, and then some of the preliminary work that's been done on particularly on land use plan and so forth. So that's really all I have to say. So I think I'll turn it over to Shad now, and he will get the program going.
While he's coming up, I want to welcome Yolanda, Ms. Shepherd. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
So good evening to City Council and Planning and Zoning Commission. Again, my name is Shad Como, serving as a project manager. So last time we were here, last October, we came for a series of meetings and we received a lot of great input. We had sessions with you all. We met with the community. So as Jeff mentioned, we're going to look at the summary of that input that we did receive. And then we want to talk about some guiding principles with you all and get your thoughts on those. And then we'll move into the latter part of the evening. We'll move into the future land use exercise, and we'll give you some instructions on that as well. So we want to look at tonight as a sort of a workshop where we roll up our sleeves and really starts to put some thoughts to paper. So the community meeting, if you recall, we did a polling exercise before we broke off into the open house portion for that meeting. And one of the questions we asked, what do you like most about living in Mesquite? And you'll see here a variety of, we had 6 topics: parks, neighborhoods, recreation, schools, employment, and shopping. And so you could kind of see how people voted. Generally, this says that people like Mesquite. So that's a great thing. What would you consider the greatest single issue facing Mesquite was another question that we polled the audience on, and you'll see those top two, infrastructure and perception by others outside of the community, were those top two. Which of the following do you believe would enhance the overall community character and identity? Neighborhood improvements and amenities and redevelopment of those older retail commercial areas were those top two. In one word, what do you believe will make this plan most successful? You'll see the top vote getter was implementation, which is no surprise there. And that was followed by accountability and engagement. What is your favorite part of Mesquite? Those choices there you see that are bolded were the ones that received the most votes on that. My home, neighborhood, parks, trails, and recreation opportunities, and the proximity to Dallas and the freeways. There was a board that we had where people were able to put a dot where they lived. I don't think everybody participated in that exercise, but you will see that there were dots in pretty much every area of the city, within the city limits. Similarly, there was another board where we talked about transportation and circulation, wanting to get input on sources of congestion where accidents occurred frequently, those areas that people would enjoy biking or walking, and those areas that they see or would like to be more safe. Most of those responses you'll see along East Glen, Davis Road as well. The Town East roadway received a lot of dots. This was East Glen and Davis, and of course along 635. Another dot exercise, housing and neighborhood. So this, we asked for people to identify those neighborhoods or those areas in need of additional code enforcement, those areas where there was a need for additional recreation or programming, aesthetic improvements, as well as additional or new housing. Again, there were dots around pretty much throughout the city. We did discuss earlier today, we had a focus group on housing and neighborhoods, so we were able to dig in a little bit deeper and to identify some of those areas that need more attention that we'll be looking into a little further in the comp plan. The areas of focus, the green dot represented the area that you believe was the area that needed the most attention. The yellow dot was second and the red dot third. You'll see that downtown, the rodeo area received the most dots, but there was also interest in town east area and some other areas as well. So we are aware that there is a current plan in process for the downtown area, and there are some things happening in the rodeo area as well. So I think people will be pleased to know about those initiatives. What's Mesquite identity? And this was really to just get an idea of what people, what their thoughts were or how they saw Mesquite. You'll see that rodeo capital and family friendly were the two that received the most responses. Now, the comprehensive plan won't go into, trying to label what Mesquite should be called. It's a land use plan, but it was good to kind of understand. And so perhaps through land uses, the identity of Mesquite will come through. What's missing in Mesquite? Entertainment venues and housing choices were those top two. So moving along to the online survey, the online survey was out for, I think it was about 3 months, and we received around 300 responses. And so you'll see that the majority of the people that responded to that lived in Mesquite, and some also worked in Mesquite as well. You'll see, though, 35% lived in Mesquite, and then the 33% lived and worked in the city. There was a variety of age groups you'll see there, with the most between the age range of 45 and 64 years old. Also, was pretty interesting is that a lot of people have lived here for a number of years, and so Mesquite has great resident retention, which is also a great thing as well. How would you rate Mesquite in terms of overall appearance? Again, some positive responses there as well. What is the most important factor for you when you decided to move to Mesquite? You'll see that the selection of housing and the housing affordability, as well as people who were born and raised here, were top, but you'll also notice that other category was 28%. What we found in that category was schools, being near family, and affordability of homes were some of the responses that led that category. What new development types are needed most in Mesquite? Entertainment, restaurants, open space, and parks rated the highest. What would you consider the greatest single issue facing Mesquite today? Perception of Mesquite by others outside of the city, infrastructure, and other. And you'll notice that those two also were reflected in the community meeting as well. What would you consider to be Mesquite's greatest opportunity for future improvements? Redevelopment of existing areas. And we were talking about this a little bit earlier. Mesquite is approaching, especially in the area that's more established, you're approaching that redevelopment phase for some of your older areas. And so we want to make sure that the comprehensive plan addresses some strategies to help you all in that aspect. What would you consider to be Mesquite's greatest asset? The greatest asset, location in the Metroplex area, so your location to the regional employment centers and things of that nature. You'll see that lease was downtown, but again, people we're looking at downtown as it is today, but. Again, that was one of the areas of focus, and there are some things that are happening there. So we suspect that will change over the next several years. What would you consider to be the greatest threat to your vision for Mesquite? Visitor perception and identity. Again, that's one of those themes that has been occurring throughout. What is your number one desire for Mesquite? To improve older areas. That was also followed by additional housing choices, as well as new restaurants and entertainment. What transportation mobility improvements should be considered? The condition of roadways, local and regional transit options, sidewalks, bike lanes, and trails. Do you believe Mesquite has adequate access to the following health resources? You'll see in the left column here, the green pretty much represents agreement amongst those. The one that did stand out was fresh foods. Of course, we're living in a society now where healthy eating, that's a big initiative, and so people are looking for those farmer markets and just having closer access to fresher foods. Imagine Mesquite as you would want it to look or appear in the next 10 to 15 years. The themes that came out of that response was unique character and identity, improved roadways and mobility options, improved sense of safety, entertainment, retail variety of housing options, parks and trails, improvements to older neighborhoods. And you may have recalled the large vision board. We had this board created for the taste and trade. It was also here at the meeting, the community meeting as well. And out of all of that information that people wrote on the boards, these were the themes that arose out of that vision board. You'll see entertainment, venues, roads and infrastructure, healthy foods, more housing options. Again, the things that we've been hearing throughout the majority of the input. So any surprises? Anything pretty much sounds what you all hear? So what do we do with all of this information? What do we do with all of this input? It's real vital and important to receive input, not only from you all, but from the residents as well. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people, they ask the question like, how does my input make a difference? And so we use the input to help to guide the recommendations in a comprehensive plan. One of the ways we do that is by developing guiding principles. So these guiding principles, if you will, serve as the foundation for the comprehensive plan. And these guiding principles are also serve as that foundation, but help to guide the recommendation. So every recommendation or strategy that is in the comprehensive plan, we want to go back to these guiding principles to see if they fit within that, because they essentially become the vision for the document and the community. So we drafted some guiding principles that we'll get your input on here in a few minutes. But you'll notice here in this left column, these are the themes that have come out of all of the input that we've received: identity, safety, housing, infrastructure, connectivity, redevelopment, and entertainment. And so each one of these guiding principles speaks to each one of these themes. And I'll read these, and then we'll do a small polling exercise to get your input on these as well. So the first one related to identity, it reads, establishing a unique identity that reflects Mesquite's character and enhances its aesthetics through sustainable development, urban design, and historic preservation. Safety, promote community safety and crime prevention through environmental design and public safety initiatives. Housing, encourage a variety of quality residential development that meets the current and future housing needs of the community. Infrastructure, maintain and build quality infrastructure and roads to attract and support existing and new development. Connectivity, provide safe, multimodal mobility options to connect people to employment, amenities, and neighborhoods both locally and regionally. Redevelopment, develop strategies to encourage revitalization in older residential and commercial areas. And the last one, entertainment, create and or encourage a variety of destination entertainment venues and events in Mesquite. So what we'll do now, you have a polling device in front of you. We're going to go through each one of these guiding principles, and we want to get your feedback. Again, what we're looking for here is to make sure that these guiding principles accurately reflect the input and the direction and the vision as we move forward. So you have three choices. The first is good as is, so we're good with the principle, and we'll move forward. B is not good, start over. Hopefully we don't have too many of those. And the last one is okay, but it needs work. And if it needs work, or if it's not good and start over, then we like to pause and kind of talk about, do we need to change some verbiage? Does it need to be reworded, et cetera? So it sounds like we need to have some discussion on the first one. So I'll open it up for...
We're talking about the goal, the wording of the goal.
Yes.
I was reading on that.
Yeah, so we want, do we need to, and you can change your choice if you, as long as the polling hasn't closed and I hadn't closed it yet, you can change your choice if you need to. So I guess we won't have much discussion. So is everyone clear on? Okay. And in this case, it seems like the majority is good as is. But if it's something that just really that you just want to say, just let us know. All right. So I think we'll move to the next one. Promote community safety and crime prevention through environmental design and public safety initiatives. Okay. We'll move to the next one. Encourage a variety of quality residential development that meets the current and future housing needs of the community. All right, total agreement. Next, maintain and build quality infrastructure and roads to attract and support existing and new development. Next, provide safe multimodal mobility options to connect people to employment, amenities, and neighborhoods both locally and regionally. Any discussion on this one? Seems a little split. Okay. Develop strategies to encourage revitalization in older residential and commercial areas. Any discussion needed? And the last one, create and/or encourage a variety of destination entertainment venues and events in Mesquite. Okay, everyone good?
Can we go back to the one prior to this one? Is it too late?
We can go back.
Should that be more of an actionable statement?
Is this the one you're referring to?
Yes. Could it be more of an actionable? Because there we're just discussing and developing strategies. The other ones have more action to them or implementation. Is there any way we can change or tweak it?
You have any suggestions? And just, again, these are kind of some general guidance and direction to help with vision. So the comprehensive plan will have some action items. And all of the action items and recommendations should be able to point back to one of these 7, or if a combination of the guiding principles. So again, it's just kind of general guidance. That works? Okay. Anybody else? Any other comments? Okay. Well, these will be the 7 guiding principles that we'll move forward from. And again, as I mentioned, when we start to develop the specific actions and recommendations, we want to make sure that we're that they fall under one of these or a combination of these guiding principles. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about future land use, and I'll give you some instructions on the exercise that we'll be going through this afternoon. So what is future land use? So if you will, let's try to draw some distinctions. So the future land use, when you look at a future land use plan or a future land use map, what it shows is, generally what it shows is that what is this property envisioned to be in the future? It may exist as a residential area or a commercial retail area today, but is that the highest and best use in the future? We don't know when that may be. It could be 2 to 3, even longer years down the road. But what is that vision that we want to create? Now, we understand in Mesquite you have a lot of areas that are established, and some of those aren't going to change. There are some residential neighborhoods and areas that aren't going to change. But there are some areas, residential and or commercial retail, that may be in a transition period. So during this transition period, what do we want to envision for that particular area? So we're going to look at that. This is an example of a future land use plan. A future land use plan, I'll say, is not a zoning map. So it looks very different. It's more general. You'll notice on this example here that the categories are high-level categories. For example, it identifies low-density residential. Low-density residential, for the most part, represents single-family homes, but it can be single-family homes of any particular lot size, while a zoning map is going to distinguish parcel by parcel what that particular lot size is. It might be SF1, 2, 3, or 4. As well, the same for commercial retail areas. And we have an opportunity to tweak our categories and make them appropriate for Mesquite. But in commercial retail areas, again, we're looking generally, what do we envision for some of these areas? Do we envision them to remain as commercial or retail? So tonight we don't want to get into the weeds, but we want to think high level. We want to think into the future at particular areas. What do we envision them to look like? For example, you have an opportunity along the I-20 corridor where there's a lot of undeveloped land. And so what's the vision for that? You know, what do we want to, how do we want to identify those land uses for the future for that area? So when we're going through the exercise, these are some things we want to consider and some things that we want to discuss. The future land uses for the undeveloped areas, like I just mentioned. What do we envision those to look like? Areas that should change from their current land use. Again, what may be on the ground today might not be the highest and best use for that particular area or those areas into the future. What are some potential redevelopment areas or some transitional areas? And then we also want to look at those focus areas and what those boundaries may be. For example, focus area, I know one of the focus areas that I was identified was the downtown area. Is the current boundary appropriate? Does it need to expand? Does it need to shrink? So we want to look at some of those areas and what those boundaries might be. Again, we're still looking high level. We're not getting into the weeds, so we're not drawing along property lines. We just want to look at general areas. And then you'll also see some basic things that we want to consider. For example, there are some residential neighborhoods and public facilities that is not going to change. That's what the land use is, and that's what it'll be until the end of time. Land use designations, we want to make sure that we're looking at those in general. There are some floodplain areas that is more suitable to be open space and to remain open space because of the particular risks in those areas. And then we also want to kind of look at and discuss connectivity, mobility opportunities as well. So when we're thinking about these particular land uses, do we have adequate infrastructure into the future to serve those areas? And how are we going to connect those areas to the not only the other parts of Mesquite, but regionally as well? So what we're going to do is we're going to break out into groups. This is the map that we'll be working from. This is an existing land use map, so it shows what's on the ground today. So we're going to be looking at this map and marking this map. We have some puzzle pieces there in front of you. We'll help facilitate each one of these groups. But just take into consideration some of these areas that are undeveloped. And then even some of the older established areas, do they need to remain, or how do we want to envision those into the future? Any questions before we break into the group exercises? I think there are 12 between City Council and Planning and Zoning, so we'll be able to evenly split into two groups of 6. We're going to have one group over here at this table, and then the other group will remain at this table. And probably the best way to do it is to probably just count off 1, 2, 1, 2, so we'll have a even divide. So we'll start with you.
1, 2.
1, 2.
Okay, so we'll have the 1s at this table, and the 2s will remain at this table. And we'll take about 40 to 45 minutes to go through the exercise, and then we'll want to reconvene and just kind of give a summary from each group of what was the main points that were discussed. All right, did we have some great discussion in our breakout groups? All right. Anybody want to just give a real quick 1-2 minute summary of what you talked about, or some big ideas or thoughts from group 1? If you care to share. Maybe y'all are just ready to go home. Well, I kind of highlight a couple of things that you.
I'll say that I think we all agreed that Town East Mall is the main reason most people come to Mesquite. And looking at what we saw there from your findings, we need more entertainment. We need more reasons why people want to come to Mesquite other than just to live here. And so I think we all agreed that we needed some type of venue, entertainment venue, more reason for that. The south end of our town has no restaurants, anything out there. We really thought that we needed some light industrial, some commercial, but definitely a restaurant area along I-20. There's still going to be a bunch of homes built out there, so we definitely need that. Low-density homes, basically the same here. And then down around our that area for downtown, military 635 area, possibly some multifamily, some higher density there, to try to get more people to possibly come into our downtown area and use it. So, anything else?
We talked about some maybe medium density to high density over by the Emporium. Jeff had brought up maybe some medium density on what's not really being used on the backside of the mall, kind of similar to Firewheel. Our gateways need a little bit more. We need to have a more welcoming when you come into Mesquite. We're really well on one, and we were talking about 80, and we really don't have any. I mean, we will have on 635 the ability, but like Jeff said, at 65 miles an hour, We need something else that's welcoming that says, I'm coming into Mesquite. Are we missing anything else?
Mayor, I just wanted to point out that I didn't agree with the medium to high density residential at the Emporium site. So I don't want anybody to assume that I agreed with that. I think we had some agreement on trails and connectivity of trails, the development of green space, making sure that all sorts of different residential developments, from any possible multifamily in the future to single family, we work to connect trails and green space together to give sort of a unified whole to the city. Our gateways are more than just a sign or a moniker saying welcome to Mesquite. There needs to be some depth to that, not just, as they said, when you're driving 65 miles an hour and you see a sign. And I agree, the development of entertainment venues. I just wanted to make sure that nobody assumed that I was for apartments or other high density over at the Emporium.
Let me correct also that it's not necessarily just apartments. These could be townhomes, condominiums, multiple things.
Okay. Anybody else?
Sounds good. Were you going to do number 1 or 2?
Yes.
Go ahead.
You're 2.
I thought you were going to share. I will. We looked at a lot of the older shopping centers and areas and talked about repurposing a variety of different sections. I'm always trying to look at the future. What are we going to what's it going to look like in 10 or 15 or 20 years? What do we need to be doing today to plan for? I keep saying graduates of the new high school, and how they're going to, what tech centers can we get? Figure some of that out. We talked a little bit about the old shopping centers, and maybe some of them aren't what we really want them to be today, but what can we repurpose and use the buildings? And we even talked about, there's still a need for that small sense of place area where you still can go to a small grocer that may have the fresh stuff, that you can go and get a haircut and go and have a cup of coffee with your neighbors and things like that. And if you can walk there with some green space from a park area close to your house, that'd even be better. Right, Robert?
Yes, sir.
All right. See, we can connect all that together. I think that's a good idea. Kind of like we've done with the 3 mile or 3.5 mile thing park we've already got. I think that's kind of good too. But talk a little bit about 20. We need to be sure that we have room out there for commercial and industrial, so it's not just 100% housing out there. Help with the tax base. Some of our areas. Obviously, we've talked a lot about Southeast Mesquite and the need for more commercial. And I think whoever builds the first sit-down restaurant out there is going to have a gold mine, but I don't know if it's coming or not. But we'd love for that to happen. And making sure that it's not, again, when you have residential, that there's still places out there for the commercial and some of the other developments you need. Talk a little bit about some areas that you guys were discussing around military and downtown, and somewhat out on 635 where some parcels of land. What's it need to be? If you've got a development at the rodeo with housing and new urbanism, and you've got new urbanism downtown with some other new things happening, what do we do between those two? How do we look? And from a land use standpoint, there was mention, another grocer in there, and the fact that what was it? 10 years ago, they were building 110,000-foot grocery stores, and today they're not near that big. And so you're looking at grocers today that maybe are in 40 and 50,000 feet, and so you no longer do you need this huge box, and they can co-locate. And so those are just some of the general highlights. I don't know, is there anything else we talked about?
I think you covered it. Sounds great.
Anybody else on the team?
I think we left out that conversation. When you were talking about revitalization, you also referred to the area.
Yeah, we actually circled like the apartments that go all the way to the back of, there's a church and actually some empty land, floodplain back there that possibly, if that, 10 or 20 years, if it was to be bought, you may see that it could become something other than just a multifamily. We did. Thank you. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for your participation. In terms of next steps, we have our work cut out for us for the next 2 to 3 months. But as you see, we'll be back sometime in May to discuss and present draft recommendations. So in between that time, we'll start developing the draft report. But the first thing we'll work on is the future land use plan draft. And I will tell you that you guys have a lot going on. It's a great time to be doing this exercise because you have a lot of things going on, a lot of transition. You have new areas developing. So I said all that to say is that the future land use plan, we might have a couple of iterations that we go through with some tweaking of it until we get it right. We want to make sure that we get the vision right. But we'll start working on that, drafting the report. And at some time in May, we'll be back to present the draft recommendations. So, again, thank you for your time tonight. If there's nothing else, I'll turn it back over to the Mayor.
Any other things? Do we need the motion to adjourn? Somebody? Have a motion second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you all for being here tonight. We need to do more of this. Thank you very much.